Hello, you're watching ABC News Now. I'm Rob Simmelcare in New York. ABC's 2020 is planning a special one-hour edition, Myths, Lies, and Downright Stupidity. The broadcast coincides with the paperback release of John Stossel's book of the same name. The book, which is out May 1st, blows the lid off of some of the world's many myths and tall tales. 2020's John Stossel is with us now in New York. John, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Rob.
So, John, one of the myths that you talk about in your book, you've got an opinion piece up right now on abcnews.com about it, and it's gun control in light of the Virginia Tech massacre recently. Your piece argues that, correct me if I'm mischaracterizing it, but that stricter gun laws would not have necessarily prevented the massacre at Virginia Tech. Tell us about your position there.
That's accurate. I mean, watching the mainstream media, you would think it's just a matter of fixing it with gun control, and there are loopholes or lax gun laws that let the bad things happen. But there just isn't evidence that gun control is crime control. England banned guns 10 years ago after there was a school shooting, and they collected guns, confiscated hundreds of thousands of guns from people. Did crime go down? No. Crime went up. Shootings went up because the criminals just don't obey these laws. I think there's this impression in the media that I hear that the only people who oppose these laws are right-wing NRA gun nuts who just want to have dangerous things in their homes. But the fact is that the CDC, the National Academy of Sciences, have looked at gun laws, and they're yet to find that they stop crime because they cause an unintended consequence, which is that the criminals then know that the only people who have guns are they. And cons we talk to in jail say, look, we're not afraid of the police. We're more afraid that the guy we're going to rob might be packing. And
John,
that deters crime too.
This is one of the issues that I think statistically you see stats used by both sides of this argument in ways that really make you stop and scratch your head what the truth really is. Because I read things, for instance, The Economist magazine, which is a British-based publication, after the Virginia Tech massacre came out with an article saying America has a tragic obsession with guns, and we here in England, fixed this some time ago, and it's had a positive impact, but yet they won't do this in America. And they threw some stats out there that I don't have in front of me that seem to indicate gun control was making a difference there. So, is it really the case that fewer guns or less availability of guns does really not have an impact on gun violence?
Well, I don't know what The Economist is saying, that clearly the European and the British reporters have a lot to complain about that they see in America. But I think The Economist is wrong if they're saying that the gun law passed there reduced gun crime. It didn't. Yeah. And I think the National Academy of Sciences and the CDC are pretty reliable. And they looked at a lot of these studies, and they just couldn't find any evidence of it. Plus, there's so much ignorance. I remember interviewing Al Sharpton, and I said to him, what would life be like if there were laws that allowed any adult to carry a hidden pistol? And I think if I say the same thing to most of my colleagues, they would have the same reaction, which is that, oh my God, there'd be carnage in the streets. And yet that is the law in 40 states in America now. And there's no more gun crime in those states.
What about the specifics of the Virginia Tech situation, John? I mean, this troubled young man, Cho, he was not a hardened criminal. He wasn't the kind of guy who knew of illegal gun dealers, most likely, or, was connected to an underworld where guns were freely available. If guns hadn't been easily, legally obtainable by someone like him, do you think it's possible that he just may never have figured out a way to get a gun and maybe just wouldn't have done what he did, or would have done it in a way that was much, much less damaging?
It's certainly possible, and it would certainly be good if we could find a way to keep mentally unstable young men from getting guns. Yeah. But there's also the possibility that if the law hadn't been so strict, that another student would have had a gun and would have stopped him after he killed just a few people, which is what happened a few years back at the Appalachian Law School, which also had a law saying no guns in school, but two students had broken that rule, and they went to their cars, got their guns, and they stopped what might have been just as deadly a rampage.
Yeah, well, I love the book, and it really does go after a lot of these things that I think a lot of people assume to be true. And, you know, there's certainly a vigorous debate that can be had, as we're having right now on your gun control argument. But tell us a bit more about the special we'll be seeing.
Well, it goes along with the subtitle of the book, Everything You Know is Wrong. And we will look into a bunch of myths. One is ethanol. It's supposed to be so good for the country, and the politicians all say that it's going to end our energy dependence and it's going to clean the air. But again, the evidence just isn't there. And we'll do lighter things like, can you kill somebody if you throw a penny off the Empire State Building?
That's what I heard a long time ago, and I always figured that you can't, right? Because the penny can only get but so fast. It doesn't just become like a bullet speed because you're dropping it from a very high distance, right?
A pen might, because aerodynamically it goes straight down, but the penny floats.
The air keeps it from going. And another couple that you have, I've got a copy of your book right here. You say price gouging is actually good for consumers?
Well, when they call it gouging, how could it be good? But what the politicians called gouging is what economists call sudden price increases. And prices are not just money. They are also information. And sudden price increases are what get people to rush in to supply us with more stuff. So after a disaster, if the price of batteries goes way up, that's not evil, because it gets a bunch of people to rush batteries to the scene. And laws that make that illegal end up hurting people.
What do you think is one of the myths in here that people would be most surprised to hear you know, rebutted or debunked?
Boy, it's hard to pick, but price gouging is right up there. Your dog's mouth is cleaner than yours. That's a myth.
I remember that. Yeah, a dog's mouth is cleaner than a human's mouth, right? Is that just total bull?
Well, think about where your dog puts his mouth.
I've seen. I wouldn't want my mouth being there. Yeah.
Now, it's true that you're unlikely to catch diseases from your dog, because they get different kinds of diseases. My favorite is that businesses basically are ripping consumers off. And from my 30 years of consumer reporting, I've discovered the biggest rip-offs come from the regulators who are supposed to be protecting consumers. And business, by and large, gets rich only if they give consumers what we want.
John, I'm just curious, before we go, how do you come up with all these things? I mean, are these just things as you go through your life as a journalist and just as an American, you kind of come upon and jot down and then decide to go off and research?
Yes, often. And often I'm ashamed, or must say, to be honest, we just read a lot and we steal ideas from all kinds of printed media, giving credit where credit is due, and make them into television.
All right. Well, we look forward to the special coming up on 2020, John. And again, here's the book. Check it out. It is Myths, Lies, and Downright Stupidity. It is out in paperback on May 1st. It is a good read. And John Stossel, 2020 anchor here in New York, thanks again for checking in with us.